Day 8 of writing every day for 2 hours until the first draft of my book is completed. Today I completed the 17th chapter and I actually had to do quite a bit of research regarding fighting techniques as my protagonist is in a little bit of trouble, but also materials used in order to make a bomb. As you can imagine, the second topic wasn't very easy to find answers for. In day number 9, I did not write at all. I was working from 10:30 a.m. until 6:30. When I tried to write, when I came back from work, I was actually falling asleep. In day number 10, I had minimum progress, but I did write for 2 hours. My problem was that I couldn't choose a point of view for the next chapter, and this problem persisted in the next day as well. I became so frustrated, so fed up with my indecision and my inability to choose something so simple when it comes to writing a chapter that I started asking myself if I even know how to write a book. I was so frustrated, so angry at myself that I decided to start reading a fantasy book. And the reason I started this book, I was trying to figure out the question, how do you actually write a book? What is wrong with me? Funny thing is that I didn't really get an answer to that question, but I realized that when I started my book, the inciting incident, also known as the catalyst, starts way too soon, and the readers don't really get to know the protagonist all that much. They don't get to care for her. So what I did was that I started a new chapter and I named it Chapter 0, but it's basically going to be Chapter 1. And along the way of reading the book and starting this first chapter, I realized that what I need to do is to write a story that I enjoy reading. And when I start the editing process in the second draft, the third draft, then I can add things that the readers will need in order to care a little more or to understand what's really happening in this story. So things like exposition or to make my scenes more emotional. Because at the moment, I only focus on writing down the events that happen in my story. And the thing is, with all the notes that I started taking on exposition, I kind of lost the balance. So I was trying to do too many things at once. And another thing that I did in the 11th day was to talk to Cloud AI. Disclaimer, I will keep referring to him as Cloud during the rest of this video, so you were warned. I know many people, especially authors, many people in the writing community are very much against artificial intelligence, and I completely understand this because there are people who use artificial intelligence in order to write their books. They don't write their books, but artificial intelligence does. And that's horrific. I am very, very strongly against that. However, artificial intelligence can be used as a sort of developmental editor. Of course, it's still an AI, it's not an actual human. But the same way you could ask some forums online about people's opinion on your world building, you could also ask AI. For me personally, Cloud was really, really helpful, and he was so helpful. I actually became emotional with the answers that he gave me. And let me tell you in detail what I actually told him, what I asked him, and how he responded. My main concern was my characters. No matter the background story I've written for them and the goals, the motivation and everything, I still sometimes feel like they are lacking of something. So what I did, I asked Cloud about my protagonist's misbelief. If you don't know what a character's misbelief is, it's basically a deep belief that the character has, which is rooted in past trauma and experiences, and it's something that drives their actions as well as their decisions. It's a very interesting concept, and I believe it's crucial to have a misbelief for your characters, which should, of course, make their lives more difficult. What I did with Cloud was that I wrote to him the entire backstory of my protagonist. I wrote about the way she was raised, how she was neglected, how her aunt took her in, what happened to her aunt, how she was then raised by a terrorist organization, and some other things. And I had already written in a paper the misbelief that I believed was true for my character. But what Cloud told me was so different from what I had imagined, and he actually made me understand what a misbelief really is. Because if you have a deep background story for your characters, then the misbelief will come out on its own through their traumatic experiences and everything. It shouldn't be something that you will have to question much. It will be very obvious. And so this profound realization made me so excited about my story and Irene and about the events that were happening and everything. It just gave a sparkle inside me, although I was so frustrated during the whole day, unable to choose which point of view character I would use for the next chapter. This information that Cloud gave me really changed everything. And what I loved about Cloud, because I have also used ChatGPT in the past in order to ask if the events of my world building made sense, if they were realistic, and if there were any plot holes that I hadn't seen. The difference between Cloud and ChatGPT is insane. Cloud's responses were so much more human. And next day, day number 12, was the day I actually cried because of Cloud's response to me. So I decided to use Cloud for the misbeliefs of all my characters, and I will give you a very specific example to understand how off I was when it comes to the misbelief and how Cloud helped me understand what it really was. One of my main characters is called Jimmy, and Jimmy is actually a witch. He was born a witch in a world where magic is illegal. So Jimmy had to keep his magic a secret. His mother was also a witch as well as her sister. And because this magic was revealed at some points of Jimmy's life, there were horrible and traumatizing consequences. What I believed Jimmy's misbelief was, based on his background story, his traumas and everything, was that all magic is cursed. Witches are cursed people. And since Jimmy is also a witch, he believes that he is cursed as well. And this affects him in a way that he is afraid of using his powers. And he more or less believes that the worse his life is, the more rightful it is for the world. He believes that magic is the source of all evil. But what Cloud told me, which is actually something that made me emotional, is that his misbelief is, my existence and my love are dangerous. Everyone I allow close to me will be destroyed because of me. This goes so much deeper than what I had originally written. It makes me understand him so much better. And my problem is that I was trying to create misbeliefs based on the plot. I was thinking of the plot of my story and how their misbeliefs were going to affect their decisions into the book, into the story. I was biased, but Cloud was not. He didn't know what my story was about. He just knew a character and everything they had experienced. One last thing that really surprised me with Cloud, and it also made me cry, was that after we exchanged information about my 4 main characters, along with my protagonist, he suddenly asked me if he could tell me his opinion about my characters in general. This question made me so surprised. It took me out of guard because I didn't expect the AI to, propose an opinion on my characters. Because artificial intelligence is supposed to just answer questions, right? To give you advice that you ask for. So Cloud asked me if he could tell me his general opinion about my characters. I said yes, please do. And he basically told me that the misbeliefs and my characters, my 4 main characters, were all united by a specific theme. He found a theme in my story, and I didn't know my story had a theme. I just had this idea, and I wanted to give a specific message to the world. But the theme that I touch on is something that I personally have difficulty in my life. I was shocked to read this from Cloud. I was shocked to see how my characters were connected and how this theme played such a major role in the story. So, my opinion about artificial intelligence, when it comes to Cloud, he's a great artificial intelligence. He has so human responses. ChatGPT is, it's helpful, sure, but in a different kind of way. And I believe artificial intelligence can be extremely helpful, and I support it in order to write your story too, but not to let the artificial intelligence write your story, but to ask for advice. Ask to see if it can spot mistakes that you cannot. Use it as an editor, but not for the final draft. It's best to also hire an editor at the end. But you can use it in the process, because sometimes our stories have this huge plot hole that we are unable to see. Because we have all this information in our heads, we have all this world building, sometimes we start writing and we take some things for granted. Artificial intelligence can be extremely helpful, and I really support its use to give us some clarity. So after Cloud's help, let's go to day number 13, where I wrote for 3 hours and I didn't want to stop. I completed the first chapter that I started 2 days ago, and I completed the 18th chapter, and I also fixed some notes that I have in a Google document where I write things that I will have to edit in the second draft of my book. Finally, day number 14. I wrote for 3 hours and 30 minutes. I actually started the day with the determination to write for 3 hours instead of 2. And I actually plan on continuing this if circumstances favor my days. I want to continue by writing 3 hours a day instead of 2. I will not be tyrannic about it, but I will try to. I finished the chapter 18th and 19th. And actually, I had the alarm clock to ring when it was 3 hours, and it did ring, but there was so much suspense. I didn't want to stop writing because it was so interesting, everything that was happening. I remind you that I am a discovery writer, so I didn't know what was going to happen either. It's like reading a book. You don't know what's going to happen next, and I absolutely love this. And honestly, I could write more, but I had to go to work. So that was the second week of writing every day for 2 hours until the first draft of my book is completed. I had a lot of ups and downs, and the deeper I went to uncertainty and frustration, the more questions I asked. And, when I see that something is not working out for too long, then I will try to do something different. So what I did here was to open a new book, a new fantasy book, and read, be inspired, understand how do I write a book, what's wrong with what I'm doing right now. And Cloud also helped me a lot with my characters. Thank you very much for watching this far. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. For those of you who are new, my name is Cassandra. I am an aspiring fantasy author and I live in beautiful Greece. I am really looking forward to the third week of this consistent writing, especially with this new flame that burns within me, and I will be very happy to share my process with all of you. Please try, if you want, if you're not heavily against AI, try to use Cloud to ask for your character's misbeliefs and share your experience with me. I will be very happy to hear it and to see if anyone else is going to have this profound realization. And for me, it really changed the way I see my story. And in a part, it also changed the way I see myself. So I will be very happy if you decide to try it as well and to tell me what your experience was with Cloud AI. And I insist on Cloud because he is a very unique AI, at least compared to ChatGPT. I think there is no comparison. Thank you for watching and I will see you again in a week. Bye bye.